You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
Time to sharpen those swords. You're listening to Sabres Semantics, a hard-hitting interview and discussion show featuring players, alumni, media, and all others who have or still cover the NHL's Buffalo Sabres. With interesting stories from the past and current objective analysis, this show is sure to provide an entertaining and unique perspective for both Sabres and hockey fans alike.
Oh, brother, we are not worthy!
Exclusively on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Now, here's your host of Sabres Semantics, Brandon Caputo.
Welcome into another installment of Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by J&L Flooring. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broder with you. Guys, make sure to give us a follow at Sabres Semantics on X for all of our Sabres content, as well as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff for you guys. And if you're watching us on the video version of the podcast today on YouTube, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell if you enjoy the video content on the network. And as well, thank you to those today listening on your favorite on-demand audio platform. Please give us some love on whatever one you chose to listen to us today. So with that said, today is going to be our season finale of this show before we hit our summer break, going into the off season for ourselves, and as well as the Sabres and the NHL. Hockey hits its off season, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about and to preview for the Sabres on today's show. Got the coaching news as well. Lindy Ruff finalizing his coaching staff. We've also got a couple of prospects to talk about for the Sabres that are currently in the Memorial Cup in the Canadian Hockey League, fighting for the crown for the biggest title in junior hockey. And we'll also discuss the draft for the Sabres upcoming with the 11th overall pick, what they might do with that pick, as well as what they might do in free agency. So with that said, Austin, actually we'll start off today with the World Championships that just ended. What were your thoughts? And we'll kind of tie that into our first poll today. And make sure to give us a follow again at Sabres Semantics if you want to get involved on the polls that we post for every single show here. So, which Sabres player was the most encouraging at the World Championships? Dylan Cozens for Canada, Rasmus Dahlin for Sweden, JJ Peterka for Germany, and Owen Power for Canada. They also had some other representation as well, including Victor Olofsson, who won bronze with Sweden and with Rasmus Dahlin. Austin, what were your kind of takeaways from the World Championships this year? Obviously, Canada didn't, reach their expectations, but Dylan Cozens with quite the coming out party on a big stage.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. We'll exclude Olofsson from this because he's pretty much all but confirmed he won't be back. I know he's technically still a Sabre till July 1st, but he's pretty much already confirmed, hey, I'm going to free agency. So every other Sabre played relatively well. Like Peterka played really well, Dahlin played well, Byram Power even played pretty well for Canada, but Cozens is probably the headliner. You know, he scored 9 goals, 2 assists, 11 points in 10 games. Eerily similar to 2021-22 when he went over to the World Championships and had a really strong tournament with Canada. He had like 7 goals, I think, that year. He had 9 this time. So, you know, obviously trying to connect dots here. Obviously nothing's the same, but last time he kind of popped off at the World Championships, he had a career the next year. So hopefully he can repeat that. But it was just good to see him shooting the puck and converting on his chances, because that's what you need to see more from Dylan Cozens. Finishing, being a goal scorer, and, you know, looked like in that World Championships he'd gotten part of his mojo back. So hopefully that sets a positive tone for the offseason going into next year.
And as far as the poll goes for the viewers out there, Dylan Cozens 83.3% to nobody's surprise, and then JJ Peterka was second with 16.7. Can you speak on what you saw from Peterka as well? Obviously had a breakout year with the Sabres, and and maybe not playing with a team that has the most talent on it in Germany, but still put out a pretty solid performance.
Yeah, Peterka kind of carried over what we saw from the regular season, right? Every now and then takes over a game and provides, an elite offensive threat. Probably proved at the end of the year last year he was a top-line winger. Proved to be one of the, Germany had some really good performances this year. They weren't relying on Peterka, which was good. He wasn't the sole person driving the engine there, but he was able to contribute, again, over a point per game for Germany. Just more positivity for him there. Loved what I saw from him. Loved what I saw from him in the regular season. So, again, Peterka looks like he's going to be a player. Last year was good. The World Championships was good. Have a good offseason here. Hopefully take that spot on that top line with Tage again next year and has some similar results, because Peterka was one of the very few bright spots for the Sabres and one of many bright spots at the World Championships that they had.
Dylan Cousins had 9 goals and 11 points total. Peterka 5 goals, 9 points. Dahlin 2 goals and 9 points, as well as Bowen Byram had a goal and 5 points. Owen Power a goal and 6 points, and as you mentioned, Victor Olofsson, who's probably no longer going to be a Sabre, but he had a goal and 4 points as well, en route to that bronze medal for the Swedish team. Thoughts on Czechia taking the gold, by the way?
I mean, elite goaltending by Lucas Dostal. Anaheim fans got to be pretty thrilled with what they saw from him there. He really, really stole the show. I watched the semifinal game against Sweden, and it wasn't even close. Like they took it to him. So really good for Czechia. They have a talented roster. I love watching countries like that, because they have all the European countries, they have a nice mix of European pros and NHL pros, and it's really cool to see those guys, win a world championship, because it might not mean the most to the North American players, or at least the North American fans, but the world championships still mean a lot to those guys. So it's really cool to see them take it home. And, Switzerland, Czechia, fine. I don't think anyone would have predicted that.
That's great to see for the hockey, I guess, diversity of countries within, we're not just seeing Canada, USA, Russia when they were in at Sweden. We're starting to see these other teams really start to pick up, the pace here in Sweden. I mean, Switzerland is definitely there. Czechia obviously has some talented players. So it's just nice to see for the overall competition level of the tournament when all these teams are obviously getting better. So hats off to Czechia for that. Anyways, we'll move on to the prospects a little bit here, Austin, and we've got Matt Savoie, WHL champion, as the Sabres posted on their website. Part of the Moose Jaw Warriors, was traded from earlier this year from the team that was help me out here.
He was traded from Wenatchee to Moose Jaw.
Wenatchee, that's it. I kept thinking of Winnipeg, but they weren't a team anymore. But it was
Winnipeg moved to Wenatchee. Yeah,
that's what it was. Yeah. So the Wenatchee Wild, he was traded there to Moose Jaw. They went on to obviously sweep the WHL championship, and the 9th overall pick for the Sabres scored 24 points in the 19 playoff games, including a goal in the deciding Game 4 after an average of 2.09 points per game during the regular season. Thoughts on Matt Savoie and his continual development and growth, hopefully going to be a Sabre in the near future?
Yeah, you're pretty much seeing everything you want to see out of him down in the WHL, right? Dominated. Moose Jaw is a very talented team, but as they're finding out, every team in the Memorial Cup is extremely talented. Moose Jaw, Drummondville, London all swept their respective conference, or not even conference, league championships. And Saginaw, I don't think anyone would argue that they're probably the second best team. They're the host, right? So they loaded up this year. They're clearly the second best team in the OHL behind the London Knights. So 4 really talented teams. I don't know. London's probably going to dominate there, but it's good to see guys like Komarov and Savoie representing well and having success again. Komarov won the whole tournament last year with Quebec. He's there again with Drummondville after a really talented year for him too. So him and Savoie looking really good. Unfortunately, it looks like all these teams have run into a buzzsaw that is the London Knights.
And our old boy Josh Bloom, back with the Saginaw Spirit, former Sabres prospect, now in the Vancouver Canucks organization. But you and I both big fans of Josh Bloom, and glad he got to go back to Saginaw for one more swan song to try to win that Memorial Cup. But you quickly mentioned Komarov, the best defenseman in the Western Hockey League this year. Can you speak to what he's done as a 20-year-old? You mentioned he was on that Quebec team that won the Memorial Cup last year, was traded to Drummondville this year, and really took off with his points per game, and obviously led the queue in that category, and earning himself Defenseman of the Year honors. What have you seen from the Russian import?
Yeah, virtually like unknown when he was drafted, right? I mean, didn't really, fifth round pick, didn't really put up a lot of points. And then all of a sudden you kind of saw steady growth from him. Really strong year with the Ramparts, followed that up with a really nice performance in the Memorial Cup. And then, like you said, this year started out pretty solid with Quebec, but really exploded after the trade to Drummondville. Really strong playoffs for him. Like you said, he got that individual hardware. Definitely a player that the Sabres are going to, he's already signed. So he's going to be in Rochester next year. He's already signed. He's going to be in Rochester next year. So another player that they get into the system, another Russian that they add to Rochester. They have 3 Russians there, adding another one there. Always better because, these guys come over from across the world and don't really have a lot of people. So it's good to have more of them together, help them adjust. I think that was one of the biggest problems the Sabres had when they tried to bring over guys from the KHL like Victor Antipin. They kind of isolated them. Not the case anymore. So that's really good. But Komarov is just a guy that I think could has a real shot at being a player. He's a really good skater, has the offensive instincts. You've seen that part of his game really strongly develop. So obviously, Sabres have a lot on the back end there, a lot of talented prospects, a lot of talented NHL players, not really a lot of room. But adding another guy who appears that he can keep up with the best of them is definitely a good thing. So Rochester's going to need some players next year because, AHL contracts, things like that. So really nice to see, and it's cool. We went a while under Botterill where we didn't have a ton of high level CHL Sabre prospects, and I know Komarov is a Russian, but he's been in the CHL his entire junior career. So really nice to see, and it's cool having 2 of them in the Memorial Cup.
Yeah, definitely nice to see the Sabres have some representation there in the Canadian Hockey League. Only one OHL prospect right now in Ethan Miedema. Maybe that changes come June's NHL draft. But quickly on Komarov, when you see he put up the offensive numbers, and obviously he's going to have to work on his defensive game in the American Hockey League, but do you see maybe after a year or two he's got a real shot of maybe being an NHL player one day? It's hard to project these junior players, but from what you've seen from his offensive abilities, definitely can be a power play guy. But maybe a year or two in Rochester to kind of fill out that his all around game. Where do you think he might be in a couple years here?
I think talent-wise, he has a real shot at making the NHL. I think the biggest problem he's going to run into, and a lot of these guys in the Sabres organization are going to run into, is where's the room, right? Byram, Dahlin, Power, Samuelson. There's not really a whole lot of room outside of being a top 6 even strength defenseman. The power play is pretty much spoken for the next 6-7 years. You have Dahlin and Power, and then we even saw them use Byram. So talent-wise, I think Komarov has a real shot at being an NHLer in a couple years. I would have him, under guys like Ryan Johnson and Nikita Novikov, but those guys also have a year or 2 a head start on him in terms of playing professional hockey. Komarov has a legitimate shot, like I said. Like you said, if he rounds out his even strength game, which I think he's extremely talented even strength player, he didn't just solely rely on the power play to put up numbers. So he has a real shot. I think it's more or less when's the opportunity come rather than a question of his talent.
Absolutely. And we talk about Rochester a little bit. We'll get into the coaching staff news, and I put a graphic up on the screen of the new coaching staff, and I'm just going to quickly read the statement here that I couldn't fit on the screen with the Sabres coaching staff and the decision to bring up Seth Appert from promoting him from the Rochester Americans. Obviously, Appert served as the Rochester Americans head coach since 2020-2021. Seth should be immensely proud of the culture he's built in Rochester and the success that has come with it. While his addition to the NHL coaching staff is a loss for Rochester, there is no doubt he has earned the position. Under his leadership, the Amberks have had tremendous results as a team and have also played a significant role in the development of a number of our NHL players. We will begin the search to find his replacement in Rochester immediately. That was the statement from General Manager Kevin Adams, and we also heard from Lindy Ruff. He said one of my top priorities over the last few weeks has been finalizing the hires and the roles of the coaching staff. After conversation with Seth, he reaffirmed what we already knew, that he is ready for this opportunity. As we move into next season, I'm thrilled with the staff that we have assembled, and the work has already begun to prepare for training camp and this entirety of the season ahead. They also hired a new video coach as well, promoting him from the Rochester Americans. He was also on Seth Appert's staff. So, Austin, reactions to Seth Appert getting the promotion to assistant coach under Lindy Ruff's staff?
I'm obviously not going to speak for everyone here, but I think for the most part, this is the move that a lot of people anticipated, right? Rochester had been extremely well, like they've been a well-oiled machine under Appert for the most part. They've had playoff success. Sure, there's been flaws with their system, but the good news is right now, Seth Appert isn't taking over the full duties. He's an assistant coach. He's going to coach the forwards and the power play. What has been really good in Rochester? Their offense and their power play. So it seems like it's a match made in heaven. Love hearing him talk about how he wants to change the power play in terms of using the bumper. You have to use puck movement. You have to get people moving and things like that. Stuff we never saw under the Sabres power play. We saw working in Rochester. Something else that Rochester had that Buffalo has. They have elite shooters on forward. Yuri Kulich, Isaac Rose, and guys like that. Buffalo has Jack Quinn, Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin. They have all that stuff. But the one thing that Appert did not have in Rochester that Buffalo has is an elite puck-moving power play quarterback. No disrespect to guys like Ryan Johnson, Ethan Prow, all very talented AHL defensemen. Obviously, nowhere near the level of guys like Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. So I'm very excited to see what Appert does with the power play. And just familiarity, right? He's coached Peterka. He's coached Jack Quinn. He's coached a lot of these guys. He's going to know how to use them and get them in good spots. He's got 2 years to work under Lindy Ruff. We'll see what happens after that, but definitely like this move. Seems that I can't say for sure the Sabres were going to lose him if they didn't promote him, but it's definitely a well-earned promotion, and I think it's also a smart move by the Sabres to provide a little security on keeping a potential guy that they want in the organization long-term, because it feels like that Kevin Adams feels very strongly about Seth Appert. So this is a well-rounded move by everyone involved. Does suck for Rochester because Appert has done a really good job down there, but guys like Vinny Prospel and Nathan Page pretend like Carmano said those guys have a shot. He's going to look around. They're going to be fine. So it sucks. It's a big loss for Rochester, but what their loss is Buffalo's gain, and I'm very, very interested to see what improvements Appert makes with the offense and the power play.
Matt Ellis, has been moved to a different role within the organization. Austin, I know he's not going to be running the power play anymore, which is going to excite a lot of people, but I think keeping Matt Ellis around, obviously he adds some value there, and they wouldn't have kept him around and moved him if they didn't believe so. So he stays within the organization. But I look at Seth Appert, and I think this is a good spot because, again, you can maybe he can be the guy to take over for Lindy Ruff after the 2 years, after he gets the team into a spot where he wants, or maybe a couple years after. But I really liked what I saw from Seth Appert, and when they said that they were searching for a new coach with experience in the NHL, you thought that Seth Appert's name was probably going to be out of that because he hasn't coached in the National Hockey League. But I really like what he's been able to do with the Rochester Americans. He's a smart coach, and I think give him a few years as an assistant here with the Sabres and see what he can do. Maybe he's the guy that is eventually the one to take over for Lindy Ruff. But I like him in that spot right now, not forcing him into a role maybe he might not be ready for, which the Sabres have done before with first-time head coaches. So I really like the idea of having that collaboration with Lindy Ruff and Seth Appert, because obviously Seth is going to be able to learn a lot from a guy like Lindy Ruff, and maybe it'll help him for when his opportunity does come to become the head coach of the Sabres.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that they don't have any familiarity with each other. I'm not sure if it was Appert or Ruff, but one of them pretty much said that when we talked, that was the first time that we'd ever met. But they kind of have the same vision, which is a good thing. So I like that there's no pre-existing relationship there, so they're going to have to kind of work out their working relationship, but it's good. They're both coming in, fresh eyes, clean slate. Like you said, I'm sure the Sabres know the long-term possibilities of keeping Appert around, but let's be honest, if you're trying to plan 2 years ahead, you're probably not doing your job properly. But yes, it is good that he gets NHL assistant head coaching experience. So if 2 years from now Lindy Ruff does decide to retire, they potentially do have a guy who can take over. Obviously, I think anyone with a brain, when they saw that hire, at least thought of that possibility happening. Obviously, the Sabres should not pigeonhole themselves into doing that. But if that situation plays out and it works out for the best, that's a fantastic job by Kevin Adams to have some foresight there. I just think it's going to be interesting. The Matt Ellis thing I thought was funny because I think it was reported as soon as Don Granato was fired by Lance Lozowski that Adams was moving to a different role within the organization. He was no longer going to be on the bench running the power play. But yet, when they hired Appert and announced that Matt Ellis was still sticking around, people still seem to freak out and think, well, what the heck are we doing here? not realizing that it had been reported since Granato's firing that Matt Ellis was not going to be a behind-the-bench coach anymore. You know what Matt Ellis is good at? Player development. That's how he kind of got into the Sabres coaching staff, and he was really good at helping, player development with the Sabres. So if he can kind of get back to doing that while also providing some eyes from up top, good for Matt Ellis. He obviously was not good at running the power play. There's no debating that. I still think, he has some use and he's a very talented coach. So glad to see him stick around a little bit longer, but in a completely different role. So I think anyone freaking out about Matt Ellis, don't worry about it, because he's not going to be doing any X's and O's power play or coaching during games.
Yeah, he doesn't have to go far. He's a Niagara native, so he can just continue to drive to the games there in Buffalo. But I do think he does have some value in player development, as you mentioned, Austin. Just maybe not behind the bench role was the best place for him to succeed. Is there anything else you wanted to mention with the rest of the coaching staff? Mike Bales is also back. Marty Wilford's back. They brought in Amir Gulati as the new video coordinator from Rochester. Any quick thoughts on the rest of the coaching staff?
Yeah, I mean, Bales, goaltending coach, easy no-brainer to keep him around. He's been very good since he came here. We've seen Luukkonen take strides. We saw Levi show flashes in the NHL. Clearly, he's a good goalie coach. They should have stuck around. Wilford, I don't have any issue with. I mean, penalty kill fell apart near the end there, but he did coach the defense well, and he did have the penalty kill looking pretty solid throughout, at certain points throughout the season. So I have no issue with Wilford sticking around. Interesting that typically how it works in the NHL is the GM gets to pick an assistant coach and the head coach gets to pick an assistant coach. So I'm not really sure if, Ruff picked Appert with a little bit of a nudge from Adams, or if, you know what I mean, and Adams kept Wilford around. Not exactly sure that dynamic there, but usually that's how it goes. But interesting that Appert was really the only assistant hire that they were making. The coaching staff is set, at least according to everybody within the Sabres organization. So a little bit interesting there, but as much as Granato deserved a lot of flack, the coaching staff wasn't 100% the problem. It was the players. Well, the coaching staff's been fixed now, so now it's up to Adams and the players to put in the work to building out this roster and getting back to playing the way that they're going to play. But coaching staff, I'm relatively satisfied with. I know some people out there were complaining that, they took the easy way out, they cheaped out, they hired Ruff, they promoted Appert, they kept coaches, blah, blah, blah. But, at the end of the day, you have a new guy running the power play, and the offense is what you wanted, and you have a new head coach, which is what you wanted. So, I don't know. If people are going to complain just to complain, that's cool, but I'm definitely going to give this new coaching staff the benefit of the doubt, because it's over half of it's been remade.
I think we talked about it when the Lindy Ruff hire was made. I think a lot of us were actually pleasantly surprised that they made the amount of moves that they did with the head coach and changing some of the assistants around. I think there was a real possibility that they might have run it back with the exact same people next year, and we were all worried about that. But at least they did make some changes there and attempt to know that they needed to go in a different direction, so I'm happy with that as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, the head coach deserved a lot of the blame, but like we've said multiple times, now it's Adams has to give Ruff, Appert, Wilford, all these guys a legitimate roster that can compete, and the players have to go out and perform, because Adams has no more scapegoat. The players don't have any more scapegoat. It's a new coaching staff. We'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. So we'll get into the offseason preview in segment 2 today. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back here on Sabres Semantics, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by J&L Flooring.
J&L Flooring is Niagara's specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride and provide elite customer service and support. With a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety of truly unique products, J&L Flooring is your specialty flooring and decor boutique shop. All of their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel good about your flooring choices. Their goal is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity. Offering a unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team, they simplify the process to make your life easier and to make your home more beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road in Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. If you think you can get a better deal anywhere else, you don't know Jack at J&L Flooring. Pets bring immense joy to our homes, becoming an integral part of our families. But this living, loving experience often requires a little extra care and attention. That's where Global Pet Foods comes in, with owners and staff ready to support you every step of the way. Check out one of their locations today. 3643 Portage Road in Niagara Falls, 160 Highway 20 in Font Hill, or 400 Scott Street and 344 Glendale Avenue in St. Catharines. Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family. Proud to sponsor the Dog Pound Podcast, the official podcast of the Niagara Ice Dogs.
Niagara Golf Lounge features 2 state-of-the-art indoor golf simulators, allowing you to play some of the world's best courses all year round. The perfect place to indulge all season long. Don't worry about getting thirsty while you play around with your friends. Their fully stocked bar offers a wide selection of drinks, appetizers, and a variety of meals are also available to enjoy before, during, or after you play. Grab a seat next to the fire in their comfortable sports lounge. Didn't bring your clubs? No problem. They have partnered with TaylorMade to offer you the best rental clubs. You won't want to miss their exclusive NFL and NHL giveaways for the Buffalo Sabres and Buffalo Bills. Located in the Best Western Plus Cairncroft Hotel, 6400 Lundy's Lane in Niagara Falls. Visit NiagaraGolfVacations.com to learn more and to reserve your golf bay today. The Niagara Golf Lounge, Niagara's home for golf and sport all year round.
Are you currently looking for work in the Niagara region? If so, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road in Niagara Falls. Their many free services include a fully staffed resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment, training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, Better Jobs Ontario information and registration assistance, and you can check out their website at ehc.on.ca or call 905-358-0021 for more information. The Niagara Employment Help Center, helping people find work since 1983. Wild Bill's Auto Repair is your local center for auto maintenance and repair in the Niagara region. Since 2012, Wild Bill's Auto Repair and Body Shop has been helping customers stay safe and confident on the road, knowing their vehicles in top running condition through their services. Located at 7868 Oakwood Drive in Niagara Falls, the garage started as a tribute to the owner's father, William Robert Hunter, who passed away, continuing the same community spirit and high level of service which customers came to expect from him back at Hunter's Auto Repair. Their multi-award-winning auto shop has earned the trust of the Niagara community with its fair treatment of all customers, who can feel confident they'll get the trustworthy advice and repairs during their visit. Their experienced crew loves meeting new people and looks forward to forming a lasting partnership for the care of your cars. To find out more or to book service, contact them today. 905-358-7868 or wildbillsauto.ca. Wild Bill's Auto Repair, helping customers stay safe and confident on the road since 2012. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Hey, hey, here we go, it's hockey night in Buffalo. Hey, hey, here we go, the boys in blue, white, and gold. Hey, hey, here we go, make some noise, get in the zone. All for one and one for all, let's hear you from your heart and soul. And we will stand raising our hands, saying, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo. We will be here till the end, saying, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's Sabres Semantics episode. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broder back with you. We're going to go over the Sabres offseason plans with the draft, free agency, get into what we think the Sabres will probably do come July 1st and the rest of the offseason. Thank you to everybody that's tuned in all season long. This is our season finale episode. We've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations with this team this last year, and we thank you for sticking with us on a bi-weekly basis here with the show. And Austin and myself, thank you for listening, watching, and supporting us throughout the season. Going off of that, we want to also say thank you to everybody who voted us first place in the Community Votes Niagara region for the entertainment category. Really appreciate everybody that contributed to helping us get first place there with the business awards, and look forward to continuing this going into the next year, but really wanted to give a shout out to everybody that helped get us to this place and for voting us first place for entertainment in the all of Niagara region. So with that said, Austin, we'll get into part 2 of today's show. We're going to go over the draft. The Sabres picking 11th overall at this moment. They didn't move up or move down in the draft lottery. We'll get into free agency a little bit later, but starting off with the draft itself, and that was one of the polls today on Sabres Semantics. Make sure to give us a follow there to get in on the conversation. What should the Sabres do with the 11th overall pick in the 2024 NHL Draft? Stay at 11 to select, trade it for a player, trade down, or trade up. Trade it for a player actually won this with 52.4%. Second place was stay at 11th to select a player at 33.3%, and then trade up in the draft was third at 9.5%. Austin, where do you stand with this?
I agree with the poll. You should be looking to move that for a potential player, not necessarily just the first round pick. If you can package that with something to get a real solid piece, that's good, because let's face it, just straight up trading the draft pick for a player at draft time doesn't necessarily always go well. The value isn't necessarily always there. I.e. Buffalo was able to get Robert Hagg and 14th/13th overall because there was a forfeited pick in there for Rasmus Ristolainen. So it's not like you're getting elite high-end players by trading this pick, but Kevin Adams needs to be doing everything he can to get his team over the hump and into the playoffs next year. So I think trading the pick for a player, not exactly sure who that player is, mind you. I have some guys in mind, potentially Pavel Buchnevich. Is there a package to be had for potentially Martin Necas or something like that? Obviously, the first round pick alone isn't going to be able to get that done, but if you can package some of your assets together to get a real player, I'm all for that. If you're not trading that pick for an immediate help, I don't see any sense in trading down or trading up. I mean, what the heck did the Blackhawks do the other day, giving up a second to move up two? It was weird, right? That doesn't normally happen in hockey, so seeing that stuff this far out from the draft is weird. On draft night, this draft class is so... After Celebrini, it is a complete crapshoot. I know that's every draft, but this year it's Celebrini, and then it can kind of be anything. There's arguments for a ton of players to go in the top 5. There's tons of players that can potentially go top 10, top 15. So it's not like there's a must-have player, but also at the same time, there's a chance a player does fall to you, i.e. Zach Benson. But to me, if you're not trading the pick, you have to keep it, because you don't need to waste assets to move up in the draft to get another high-end prospect. You have lots of high-end prospects. And to me, you don't need to trade down to try and get more draft picks, because, again, you don't need more kicks at the can right now. Your prospect pool is in a relatively good shape. You need to be getting immediate help. So it's either trade the pick, stay at 11, in my opinion.
And when you look at the Sabres draft cupboard, I mean, they're pretty good. They're missing a 5th, but they have an extra 4th this year. So it's not like they're the Tampa Bay Lightning and they have no picks for the next 3 years upcoming. Like you mentioned, they have a solid prospect pool, and already there's already they've got too many prospects at this point. So I think if you can find the right move for whatever you think the biggest need is for the team, whether that be a middle 6 winger with term, or maybe a veteran goaltender. Again, I don't know what their plans are with Levi and Lukin, and if that's going to be the tandem going into next year. But again, I'm with you. I think if you can find value for a player on a team that is really strapped for cap, and they need to really unload a player, maybe you can get a player that you might not be able to usually get for the 11th overall pick, or even a little bit more. You can get a very talented person on this roster with that cap flexibility that the Sabres do have at the moment, and with the top end prospect pool that they have, maybe they package, like you said, the 11th and a prospect or what have you. But I think Adam should be open to looking at situations of moving out of that spot, because the Sabres have had so many picks within the top 15 in the last 10 years or so, that their prospect cupboard is pretty full at the moment. And I think a strategic move, maybe not doing what Tim Murray did, where he moved out all 3 of his first round picks for guys like Robin Leonard, Evander Kane, and Ryan O'Reilly, but I think there are possibilities out there for teams that are looking to unload some players for cap relief there.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, if you're just straight up trading the 11th overall pick, you're probably not going to get a super high end guy. But if you package it, you have a shot. Or if you just straight up trade the 11th overall pick and you go get, I'm not for this trade, but there was just guys like Scott Lawton are out there, that bottom 6 veteran guy. Don't trade the 11th overall pick for him, but that kind of guy is probably what you're looking at if you don't package something together. So if you can package one of your higher end pieces along with that pick, you could potentially get something more. I just think Adams needs to be focusing on the now, right? You have to win now. And if that means the right offer comes, like, don't just trade the 11th overall pick for the sake of trading it. But if that offer comes, you have to pull the trigger because you need to make the playoffs now if you're Kevin Adams, because the leash is starting to get short for him now. You've already fired a coach. Technically, too, if you want to give him he did technically fire Kruger, but like he also didn't hire Kruger, so it's a little bit iffy there. But yeah, like, he's got to win now. So if that means moving the 11th overall pick, you do it. If you do keep it, there are some names that will probably be pretty good available at 11. There also might be some. Again, this draft is so in flux right now between 2 and 15. Like, obviously there's higher end guys and lower end guys, but there might be someone going at like 5th overall who you don't expect to go at 5th overall. We see it all the time, and especially with a draft class that isn't like it's Celebrini and the rest really.
And when you look at it, like, again, this is not a disrespect to whoever the prospects are, but you're looking 2, 3, 4 years down the line before they become impact NHL players. I don't think they're going to fall into another Zach Benson situation where he's playing at 18 years old, most likely, with the prospects that they already have that are ready to come up from Rochester and or other leagues. But what's maybe like 2 or 3 players that excite you? Maybe, again, you never know. It could be a crapshoot that players might end up falling that might go in the top 5. But who are maybe some of your favorite players in this draft that if the Sabres were lucky enough to get a hold of that you'd be pretty happy with?
I'll mention 3 names, and again, like these names could be gone well before 11. But you look like a guy from the WHL from Spokane, like Berkeley Catton, production off the charts in his draft year, similar to Zach Benson. 116 points in his draft year. Amazing. He kind of fits the model of what the Sabres have drafted too. Another guy, I don't know where he's going to go. Obviously, as the draft approaches, his stock will be a little bit more solidified, but potentially a guy like Zane Parekh could be available. I know he's in that 9-10 range right now. I imagine his draft stock's going to go up, but if it doesn't, I could see a scenario where maybe he falls and he's there. He's an exciting player. Obviously, if you watch OHL hockey, you know that. And another guy that I like, and it's the name is part of it, but he's also an extremely talented goal scorer. And he's going to be in that 10 to 14 range, in my opinion. But Tidge Ginla would be a really nice pick for, his production and the exciting factor that he's, an elite NHL player's son. So there'd be that storyline as well. Those are 3 names that I'm looking at. There's a ton of names that could be available. I do want to stress that I am hoping that the Sabres do not have the 11th overall pick, though. I hope they trade it.
Yeah, but backup options in case they don't. But those are definitely 3 players to look at. Tidge Ginla would definitely be somebody that would obviously turn some eyes, given that as you mentioned, Jerome McGinley's son putting up good numbers out there in the Western Hockey League. But again, I think we've been through enough of these drafts where we look at top prospects for Sabres and for future Sabres. I think it's time to maybe move out of that spot and look for more immediate help as we've kind of already mentioned, and the poll kind of solidified that, and we kind of reaffirmed that we'd like the Sabres to maybe move out of picking a top end prospect. No disrespect to any player that's there. It's just at this point where they're at, they need to start moving forward quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I do want to stress. I saw someone say they should trade the 11th overall pick for Tanner Jeannot.
I saw that. I saw it today.
Yeah. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, that is not the move that I am advocating for when I say they trade. I hope they trade the 11th overall pick. But if they trade the 11th overall pick, I would be less mad than most people if they acquire a guy like Scott Laughton. But I also firmly believe if the Sabres' first overall pick was on the table for Scott Laughton would be a Buffalo Sabre by now, because I don't think the Flyers are going to get much more than a top 12 pick for a guy like Scott Laughton, as crazy as, high as they might value him. But yeah, no, I'm not asking to go out and trade the first overall pick for a guy like that, but I'm asking for a potential package involving the 11th overall pick, because I think that's your best bet at acquiring an impact player.
Yes, please don't trade 11th overall for Tanner Jeannot if Kevin Adams is listening to this show. Anyways, so we'll move into our final poll today. And that is, we're going to get into the free agency part of it after the draft for the Sabres come July 1st. And that would be, what is the Sabres' biggest need come NHL free agency? Veteran goaltender, top 6 forward, bottom 6 forward, or depth defenseman? I also voted for bottom six forward here on the poll, as you can see on the video version. 53.8% was with that. And then second place was top six forward at 46.2%, 0% for a veteran goaltender, and 0% for a depth defenseman. Austin, where are you here? I mean, you could also say like middle six winger as well.
Yeah,
but
so I think their biggest need are two top nine forwards.
Yeah.
I think getting a nice third line, how do I word this without sounding like a third line, quote unquote, two-way guy would be really helpful for the Sabres to not throw a ton of pressure on Peyton Krebs saying, here, you're the third line center this year, no competition. Competition is key. If you bring in a guy to compete with Krebs and then he ends up being your fourth line center because, like as we said earlier, Zemgus Girgensons is also apparently testing the market. So you're going to need some bottom six forwards, but if you get two legitimate top nine forwards, I think that's a really good thing for the Sabres. A third line center, a top six winger, those are probably your two biggest pressing needs. If you can get those, I think you're putting yourself in a pretty good spot. It's up to Kevin Adams now, whether that's free agency or trade. I think those are the two pieces he needs to acquire. You might see another defensive signing. I know Samuelson's coming back, but they have a decision to make on Yoki Haru. I'm still not convinced he's here next year. So if he is gone, you do need another top six defenseman, but that can be filled either free agency or, Ryan Johnson. Like there's people within the organization that could step up and take that role. But I do think, if they do trade Yoki Haru to acquire one of those forward pieces, you could probably throw defenseman as a need there. But I think that's less pressing than the two forward needs.
And we look at the situation with the roster. As you mentioned, Zemgus Girgensons, it was reported that he most likely will not be back, Austin, as the longest tenured Sabre, and a guy that the ownership group has loved since they drafted him in the 2011 draft. Has been here through all of the Sabres' 15 years of not making the playoffs here. It's been pretty incredible to see Zemgus Girgensons last this long. He's 30 years old now, as a guy that came into the league as a first-year player when he was 18 years old. Tyson Jost is also an unrestricted free agent. Victor Olofsson, as we mentioned, most likely will not be back. Eric Robinson's also unrestricted free agent. And then you've got three RFAs on the defensive side in Jacob Bryson, Henry Yoki Haru, and Kyle Clegg, as you mentioned, also on a previous episode. So they've got 8 guys that are currently NHL rostered players that are going to need contracts. Realistically, how many of those guys do you see coming back next season?
I think most you could see coming back is 2. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to keep Bryson around as that 7th, 6th defenseman. Yoki Haru is the tough one because that's, like I said, they have a decision to make on him. Is he going to be trade bait? Are you going to commit to him? He played well, but at the same time, Byram, Dahlin, Power, what is Ruff envisioned for Samuelsson are all very important things because if Ruff envisions Samuelsson as a top 4 defenseman, Yoki Haru becomes expendable. If Ruff envisions Samuelsson as that third pair guy, I could see a scenario where they try to keep him. So really, he's the guy that I'm looking at as I don't know. Bryson, it really all depends on if another team offers him a guaranteed top 6 role because I think if they do that, he's gone because he doesn't have that here in Buffalo. But if he's comfortable here, he knows his role, he knows he'll be in the NHL, I could see him sticking around on a cheap one-year deal. But I'd say 2 max. Wouldn't be disappointed if none of those guys are back.
Fair enough. Do you think Ryan Johnson plays a role in this as well, depending on what their feelings are of him as a possible top 4, top 6 defenseman as well?
Yeah, I wouldn't even be surprised next year if he becomes the Jacob Bryson of this year, where he's your 6th, 7th defenseman, but he plays a lot more than Bryson was playing last year. Like I said, I really wouldn't care if none of those guys you listed are back.
So with that, I mean, there's going to be some openings on the bottom 6 with those guys gone. So do you envision them maybe calling up some of those guys from Rochester to give those guys the opportunities? Or do you see them going out and maybe signing some guys? Obviously, they're going to want to re-sign Peyton Krebs. He's a restricted free agent. He's probably one of the guys that you'd say would be the most likely to come back on some sort of bridge contract for him to hopefully get a bigger opportunity. But as far as what they're going to do to fill out the bottom 6, like, are those Rochester guys getting the promotion, or are those moves out in free agency July 1st?
I wouldn't mind seeing like one Rochester promotion, whether a guy like Coolidge or Rosen earn that spot, that would be fantastic. But at the same time, this has been what I'm saying all episode is Adams needs to win now. You don't win now by just handing over spots to guys like Yuri Coolidge and Isaac Rosen, who are very good. I think Yuri Coolidge should be in the NHL next year. I think Isaac Rosen has a shot to be in the NHL next year. That being said, you need to go out and sign some guys or trade for some guys and really shore up your bottom six and let the guys compete for those spots, because we saw what happened when they solely relied on internal improvements on the forward group. It bit them in the ass. You can't risk that happening again next year.
No, you can't. And Rochester has some guys that also need contracts. So is there anybody on the Rochester side, the Brandon Bureaus, Brett Murray, even on the defensive side, there's Riley Stillman, Jeremy Davies. Are there anybody that Dustin Tokarski in the net? You never know with the depth, the goaltenders, what they're going to do. But is there anybody on Rochester that's expiring that you'd like to see them bring back, or are those guys all just going to be expendable and they're going to see completely new guys on the Rochester depth chart there?
Stillman's an interesting one because Adams did trade for him. So I'm interested to see what Adams does with that situation. Jeremy Davies, if he's willing to which I think he is, just to stick around and be a sole Rochester guy, he's really fun. He's really good for Rochester. Wouldn't mind seeing him stick around. Guys like Brett Murray and Brandon Biro, all depends if someone's going to offer him an NHL opportunity, right? If there's strictly AHL guys, if every organization views them as strictly AHL guys, bring them back. They're good in the AHL. They're solid. You do need a mixture of some AHL guys with your top young prospects. So I wouldn't mind seeing any of those guys brought back. I'm very interested to see what Adams does with Riley Stillman, because like we said, traded for him, played relatively well when he was here, and then lost out to Jacob Bryson this year. So I'm interested to see what happens with that situation. And
lastly, the goaltending, Austin, do you see a scenario where they let Levi be Rochester's starter next year? They go out and get a veteran backup that's an upgrade over Eric Comrie and have him kind of, support Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen as the full-time starter. You heard Lindy Ruff in his introductory press conference talk about, I've got 3 words, UPL. So obviously they believe in Luukkonen as the starting goaltender next year. They're not going to go out and try to get, a top-end starter or trade for a guy that's available. So can you see a scenario where they go out and get, that veteran goaltender to back up Luukkonen and let Levi marinate as the starter for Rochester all season long?
Could I see it? Yeah, I don't think so. I think Levi was he was awesome in the AHL, and I think UPL has every right to be the starting goalie next year, but we're a year removed from it. Last year, I thought it was kind of crazy. They were expecting UPL and Levi to be the 2 guys. If we go into that next year, I'm a little less worried because Luukkonen took steps forward. Levi was really solid in the AHL, did show those flashes in the NHL. So, if next year you come back with Levi and UPL as your tandem, and you give UPL 50-55 starts, Levi gets the rest, I think people should not be nearly as worried as they were last year. Last year, I understand the worry. This year, I think it's a little bit more reasonable, and I think you have a better shot at selling that as your goaltending duo and spending your money and your assets elsewhere rather than potentially finding an upgrade over Eric Comrie. But that being said, you are going to see some depth signings for goaltenders in the AHL. And if their original plan is to let Levi be the starter early on, yeah, I'm fine with that. But I can't imagine, in Rochester, I can't imagine a scenario where Kevin Adams wants Levi down in the AHL all year next year. I can't envision that scenario being what the Sabres want.
And lastly, is there anybody that's currently under contract long-term for the Sabres that maybe you can see a possible move for during the offseason that we might be pleasantly surprised or shocked that does get moved here, sometime after July 1st or even at the NHL Draft?
Not really. I know I saw an article saying that teams were asking about Samuelsson, so I guess he would be the guy I could see getting moved, but I can't envision Adams being too keen on doing that, at least not right now, unless the right deal comes up. I don't think anyone on the Sabres really should be considered untouchable, but guys like Cousins, Tage, they're not going anywhere. Dahlin, Power, not going anywhere. So no one should be untouchable in terms besides maybe those 4 guys. And by untouchable, I mean you have to be blown away to move them. But if a guy like Samuelsson, if the right deal comes, I can see Adams entertaining that. But also at the same time, Adams did give out that contract to Samuelsson, so he sees something there. So I doubt any of those guys are moved, but I don't know. Keep an eye on Samuelsson, I guess, because it appears that teams have at least been calling Buffalo about him. And we know as much as they might deny it, Casey Middlestat did get traded when Adams did say he wasn't shopping him. So I don't know.
And I did see a quick report yesterday that apparently the Ottawa Senators are fielding offers for Brady Tkachuk. If that trade ever happened, I'm sure 31 other teams would come calling about the services of Brady Tkachuk. I don't think it would be just one or two teams that would be in on that. I think every team would love to have a guy like Brady Tkachuk on their team. So I'm not even going to entertain that pipe dream because I don't think it's realistic. And if it was, who knows? I mean, the Sabres do have the top-end assets and draft capital to be able to make a move like that, but I'm not going to get my hopes up because I think Brady Tkachuk is a top 10 player in the National Hockey League and everything that he brings, especially at a young age, already a captain, just such a dynamic two-way player that every team, would want to love on their team. So I think that's pretty much a pipe dream at this point, but the rumor was out there, so maybe we can, hope and dream one day.
Yeah, I wouldn't even entertain that because one, if they do trade him, like you said, there's going to be so many teams offering. Two, this is not necessarily the way teams should operate. I can't envision a scenario where even if Tkachuk was on the trade block where the Senators would be willing to trade him to a division rival.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know there was rumors that Buffalo was interested in trading Ryan O'Reilly to the Habs. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I got to feel that if Tkachuk was really wanted to get out, I don't know. I just don't see Buffalo being high on. I don't even know if he has trade protection or not, but if he does, I can't imagine Buffalo being high on that list because, not to be rude, but we're a little bit more stable than Ottawa, but it's like the same scenario.
His no move clause kicks in 24-25, so that's why the rumors are coming out now that they have this.
Okay, so he doesn't have any trade protection right now. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they are fielding offers because if he's unhappy and you don't want him to have all that power, you got to do it. Kind of like, what the Sabres did with Eichel per se. But I still can't envision Ottawa being thrilled on trading him to a division rival. But yeah, if he's on the trade block and I'm Kevin Adams, there would be no future asset that would be untouchable. I would trade a lot of pieces to get Brady Tkachuk. But again, I don't see it happening.
Absolutely. You look good in that Bills jersey playing for Team USA when the World Juniors was here in Buffalo, but I think that'll be the only time we'll see him in a Buffalo uniform. So, Austin, as we approach, this is the season finale episode as we go into the offseason here, I guess what would be your ideal wish list to give the Sabres like an A or an A+ as far as they had a great offseason? Hopefully when we come back and discuss that at some point in the summertime or into the fall as we come back for the next season of the show. What would you be the most happy with the Sabres doing at the draft and in free agency to really give you some hope that they are making real change here and trying to win?
I think a move that if the Sabres make, and again, it doesn't have to be this exact move, but a move I would love to see the Sabres make, and I think it would really, inject some excitement into this, is acquiring a guy like Martin Necas or Pavel Buchnevich to be in your top six. Buchnevich comes with the risk of having only 1 year left on his contract, but he's a talented offensive player. Martin Necas seems to be on the outs in Carolina. I do remember Buffalo having a lot of interest in him in his draft year. They ended up going with Middlestat instead, but there was some interest there. So if maybe there's something to be had there. But if one of those two moves are made, I'd be extremely thrilled. And then just go get a reliable, bottom six center that has some offensive pop. Whether that's a guy like Will Carrier, a guy like Eric Hall is a different style player, but I wouldn't mind seeing Eric Hall to be signed, or maybe trade for a guy like Nick Waugh or something like that. But if you can get any combination of a third line center who has some offensive upside and a true scoring winger to play in your top six, I think it's kind of hard to complain about an offseason like that. And then anything else that happens after that would be gravy. So those are the two moves that, again, players don't necessarily matter to me, but if you can acquire actual players to fill those roles, not like the Connor Clifton, which I'm not saying was a bad signing, but like when Clifton was signed, I think it was touted more as he has a chance to be in the top four, but it's clear Connor Clifton's a third pair defenseman. So don't get a guy that has potential to be a top six guy. No. Get a true blue top six guy, whether that's free agency or trade, I don't care. And then get a third line guy with some upside.
And don't trade the 11th pick for Tanner Jeannot, please.
No.
So as we wrap up the season, Austin, thanks a lot for being the co-host with me along for the ride, this roller coaster that was the Sabres season, along with all our listeners, and look forward to hopefully having you back next season. I know you got some other things in the pipeline as well, but really look forward to continuing forward with this show as we continue our growth on the network. But it's been fun being able to talk Sabres with you this season, man.
Yeah, it's always fun talking shop with you, Brandon, and don't worry, we'll be back next year.
We will be back. So everybody enjoy the summer, enjoy free agency, enjoy the draft. We'll see what the Sabres do, and we'll see if they do something enough for us to come on here and give you guys a bonus episode during the off season. But with that said, that's going to wrap it up for Sabres Semantics right here in the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by J&L Flooring and our season. So thank you to everybody that listened and watched on the episode this season. Listen to the podcast, listen to Austin and I rant all season long about the coaching staff and other things regarding the Buffalo Sabres. But we'll be back better than ever next season, and we thank you for tuning in. So have a great summer, enjoy the draft, enjoy the offseason, and for Austin Broad, my name is Brandon Caputo. We'll talk to you again very soon. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.